The business case is compelling. A gender-diverse workforce performs better. Also financially. Diverse teams are more creative, more dynamic, and reflect the 21st century world we live in. So why are talented women still being faced with a stop sign when aspiring to leadership roles? The next person I would like to welcome up on stage is a gender diversity consultant, executive coach, PR strategist in the international music business, and just a very, very smart person. Leading next panel, A Roadmap for Gender Diversity, please welcome Claire Singers.
Well, thank you, Alphonse, for that wonderful introduction, and I hope to live up to it. So welcome, everybody, to our session on A Roadmap for Gender Diversity. And I've got great pleasure in introducing our three expert panelists who are going to guide us along this road. And they are Aniela Unguresan, co-founder of the EDGE Certified Foundation. Aniela. Ulrika Biesèrt, Global HR Manager of IKEA, and Katarina Berg, Global HR Head of Spotify. And we're going to start our session with a presentation from Aniela, and she's going to be talking about the global trends in gender diversity. So, Aniela, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Claire. I know that I'm in front of a very, very well-educated audience when it comes to gender equality in the workplace. However, what I would like to do in the next 20 minutes with you is go through some of the hard facts and figures and hopefully shake some of the assumptions that we have around workplace gender equality. The facts and figures that I will be sharing with you are the result of a work that we have been doing since 2009 with our certification for workplace gender equality, a system that looks at where companies stand on 4 pillars. 1, the gender balance across the talent pipeline. 2nd, pay equity. 3rd, the effectiveness of policies and practices to ensure equitable career flows between men and women. And 4th, the inclusiveness of the culture as perceived by the employees of that organization. So, based on those 4 pillars, and in working with organizations across 46 different countries, and I have to confess that the company that has the best scores is a Swedish company, IKEA in Switzerland, out of these 170 global organizations. One of the things that is the most striking for us, you heard in the introduction, there is more and more evidence that gender equality is the smart thing to do. Yet, the numbers contradict, actually, the fact that there is progress in gender equality. The World Economic Forum says that it will take another 187 years for the gender gap to be closed at the global level if we are moving at the current pace, because just 15% of the board seats at the global level are occupied by women, and just 25% of the senior management positions are occupied by women at the global level. So the first question that we asked ourselves, while the evidence is there, why the numbers are not moving? And it is our belief that the fundamental underlying cause is our own belief that organizations are meritocracies. I think that you hear that over and over again in your own organizations. We hire the best person for the job. We do not favor or disfavor anybody. We just hire the person that seems to have the best fit with the position that we are trying to fill in, right? So we have this fundamental belief in our capacity to recognize talent under every form, in any shape, and in any circumstances, right? So, this is the first assumption that I would like to see with you, whether we can verify it in practice. What you see on the screen right now, it's a video that was taken on a cold January morning in DC, in the subway. What you see there in a corner, a street artist playing a violin, baseball cap, jeans, playing in his corner, trying to attract the attention of the people that were passing in front of him. As you can see, nobody really stopped, nobody really paid attention. It was another busy morning. People were on their way to work, not necessarily having the availability to stop and to listen. There were more than 1,000 people that passed in front of this street artist during the 48 minutes that this street artist was playing there. And only 7 stopped. It looks like a very usual scene, but what the passers-by didn't know is that they were actually subject to a hidden experiment, trying to test exactly that. Are we able to recognize talent, no matter the form and the circumstances under which this talent is presented? Because this street artist that you see over there, it's not just any other artist, but it is Joshua Bell, one of the world's most famous violin players. And his violin, that violin in that corner, in the subway of DC, that violin, it's an 18th century Stradivarius. So Joshua played, during the 48 minutes while he was there, one of the most elegant pieces of classical music ever composed, on one of the most perfect instruments ever crafted, putting all his skills of one of the best violin players in the world at work there. One person, only one person, recognized him. And among the 7 people that stopped, there was a 3-year-old. How much money do you think, and here you see the person recognizing him, how much money do you think Joshua made? $35. There were bets going on before they started, and people were saying, of course there will be a crowd. Of course people will stop. You are an accomplished player. But yet, people did not recognize him, because this is how we are used to see him, dressed like this in a beautiful concert hall. And some of the people that passed in front of him without paying any attention paid $350 tickets just the night before to hear him play in DC. So I think that this is one of the most compelling cases showing that meritocracies and real meritocracies, in the way in which we define them, they do not really exist. Because we do not have that capacity to recognize talent under all its forms and in every circumstances. We do have a very good capacity to recognize talent under the form that is familiar to us and probably very close to the way we function. But to recognize a different type of talent that requires a very purposeful and conscious effort. So let's continue with the other assumptions. And as we will go through the other assumptions, I would like to do it under the form of a quiz with you. So I will show you on the screen some questions with different possibilities of answering. And I will show you, I will ask you to think for a couple of minutes of what your answer would be, and then to vote on what your choice is. So, the first question. 75% of companies, and here we are talking about Fortune 500 companies, say their CEO is committed to gender equality. What is the percentage of the employees working for those companies that believe this is true? 1, 80%. 2, 60%. 3, less than 50%. Please think for 1 second and then cast your votes. Show me 1 finger, 2 fingers, or 3 fingers, depending on what you think the answer is. 1, 2, or 3, please. And the answer is 3. So less than 50% of people believe that their CEO is actually committed to gender equality. And even more shockingly so, only 1/3 believe that this is a priority for their direct manager. And this is another very fundamental underlying cause why we are still talking in 2017 about the necessity of having workplace gender equality. Next question. Which of the following do you think is a vital, indispensable organizational practice in driving gender equality? 1, flexibility. 2, active management of pay equity. 3, awareness training against gender biases. 1, 2, or 3. Please cast your votes. I see a lot of 3s. 1. And the answer is active management of pay equity, which is in many cases also a legal requirement, right? So equal pay for equivalent work. This is the basic, it's the fundamental aspect. We are not saying that every company that would have pay equity would necessarily have also a gender balanced representation in the talent pipeline. But what we are saying is that without pay equity, the foundations on which everything needs to be built, it's just not there. So that's the indispensable practice. And while we talked of the indispensable practice, which one do you think is the most important career accelerator when it comes to advancing women's career? 1, leadership development training. 2, mentoring and sponsorship. And 3, stretch assignments. 1, 2, or 3. Please cast your votes. I see some 2s. I see quite some 2s. And the answer is stretch assignments. And there is a reason why we were so tempted to talk about mentoring and sponsorship, because like in every other areas of life, when it comes to diversity and inclusion and gender equality, there are fashion trends. So there was a very strong trend in talking so much about mentoring and sponsorship, which is very, very important. But in the absence of this exposure to those career-critical assignments, mentoring and sponsorship, or the leadership development training actually cannot help, cannot compensate the lack of this exposure at career-critical assignments. And I wanted to share with you the 70-20-10 rule. One of the distinguished academic advisors that we work with, Herminia Ibarra from INSEAD, talks a lot about the fact that who we are as professionals, it's 70% result of what we have learned while doing our work. 20% of who we are as professionals is forged through critical relationships and interactions at work, of which mentoring and sponsorship is a part of, and only 10% through formal leadership development training. And of course, if you don't have the 10%, you don't make it to the 100%, right? So they are very important. But when it comes to what will be able to tilt and to shift the balance, right, this gives us an idea of how important that exposure to those visible projects that are complex, that entail an important budget, where the senior leaders in the organizations are also involved, how important they are. And this is an accelerator for everybody, not only for women's career, also for men's. So talking about promotions and career advancement, do you think the following statement is true or false? Both men and women tend to be promoted exclusively based on a proven track record of past achievements and outstanding performances. Do you think this to be true or false? 1 or 2. As I said, you are a phenomenally well-educated audience. It is false indeed, because what we see is that, yes, women tend to be promoted on a proven track record of past performances. Men tend to be promoted on potential. And of course, this is the natural way to promote everybody on potential, because we are promoting people into a new role for which, their past achievements might be, an indication of, but we are still promoting them into something that they will have to grow into, that it's new for them. But we don't seem to be willing to take as many chances with the talent that we are not so used with, the talent of the group which is historically underrepresented. We are much more willing to take risks with the group which is historically overrepresented, that we kind of know better. So, continuing, what do you think is the top reason why women leave corporations and any organization? Do you think it's 1, lack of opportunities for advancement, 2, work-life issues, 3, male-dominated work environments, or 4, not feeling valued? 1, 2, 3, or 4. Please cast your votes. I see some 3s, I see some 2s. And the answer is not feeling valued. But what do they say in general? What do you think? Work-life issues, right? So, which only reinforces the myth that women opt out for caregiver responsibilities. And this connects very well with the necessity of ensuring pay equity as the foundation of any gender equity initiatives. Because feeling valued has 2 aspects. One, which is qualitative, so feeling valued for the type of contributions that we bring to the table, but also feeling valued in a very quantitative way when it comes to our compensation. So, on the other side of the spectrum, what do you think is the top reason men leave a company? Better opportunities elsewhere, not feeling valued, new work experience, or work-life issues? 1, 2, 3, or 4? No doubts about this one. But there is a trend that we see emerging, again, across the 46 countries where we work with organizations, across the 22 very, very different industries. That 4th reason, which is work-life issues, starts to be a very, very important reason also for men. And this is very good news. Talking of which, I would like to end this presentation of the global trends with a thought. Whenever we talk about workplace gender equality, we often think of what men can do to support women's career. And I would like to use a quote from Rosabeth Kanter. She is a professor at the Harvard Business School and one of the pioneers of studying gender equality in the workplace. And she says, well, I'm often asked this question of what can men do to advance women's career? And Rosabeth Kanter says, my answer is simple. The laundry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aniela. That was very thought-provoking. Right, I'd like to start with an opening question for you, Ulrika. What's your roadmap to gender equality at IKEA?
I would like to start on a little broader scale. IKEA is a values-driven company, and as such, we want to be humanistic. We have a basic belief in people, and I think that as the starting point have helped us in our work with diversity and inclusion. Then also some years ago, not so much today, that we were working quite much but proving the business benefits of working with diversity. So we actually found out that we took better decisions, that we got more creativity, meaning that the innovation was actually flourishing. We also saw that the whole environment, actually it's much more fun to work in a diverse team compared to a team and with colleagues there where everyone thinks the same or the same. And ultimately, as our product and range development, the customer became more happy with our products when we had more diverse teams. So we are a little bit over the business reasoning and showing the business performance because we've seen that. So if you ask me today, the main reason for the commitment we are having to diversity inclusion, it is simply because it is the right thing to do. I find it very hard to not stand for equality or equal opportunities or equal pay or equal gender balance. So that is actually back to the culture and values and also our vision to create an ever better day life for the many people. The many people are diverse. And then if I should be a little bit concrete on what we have done to reach the position we're having today. Firstly, we have worked intensively with our mindset and awareness, specifically when it comes to unconscious biases. So what is it within me that is maybe not fully aware that is actually hindering the work we are doing to promote, specifically now, gender equality? We have also worked with IKEA's top management, but also the leaders throughout the organization to create a true commitment. And then I personally think that one of the breaking things was when we actually set very clear goals some 5-10 years ago, where we committed to have 50% gender balance on all key positions and leader positions. And I can say today we have reached our goal. I'm never satisfied, and we shouldn't kind of relax. But today we have almost everywhere 50%, also on IKEA executive level and group management. And to maybe reflect a bit on that it's easy to say that kind of success is coming now. It's been work that we have done throughout the years. It's a 15 years long work, a systematic work. And also in our HR practices, the way we are recruiting, the way we work with succession, promotion, compensation and benefit, but also when we're moving colleagues around the world, we're having a very clear mindset. Are we now promoting gender diversity, but also diversity from other aspects? We also have something we call a diversity network, where we have ambassadors in the countries, in the markets. That is not necessarily HR people, it can be leaders, but also co-workers who has a passion and engagement for the topic, but is also a knowledge bridger and supporting the organization. And then we have done massively training. So what I'm trying to describe in a short time here is that it's just not one thing that is making it, that we in a systematic way have actually decided. And I think that the big thing is to stop talking and doing it, and to really move the things by being actionable.
Well, congratulations. I think that's a fantastic example to many organizations. Katarina, can I ask the same question to you about your roadmap at Spotify?
Yeah, I think we do, or our battle is the same that most, I think, modern organizations today. It is the battles of the numbers when it comes to diversity. But I think our roadmap, I think it would be fair to say that we are pushing inclusion rather than diversity. So what do I mean by that? The numbers are really, really important. And it's important to have those metrics and drive and follow up on that. And that is what we're doing, obviously. I don't think that is really unique. But really, really pushing inclusion and discussing what that actually means to have an inclusive organization and a culture, and why that is really important to us. And I think it kind of drills down to one thing. If you are the disruptor in the market, if you very much of your DNA is part of being innovative, diversity is really important to that. It's key. But again, if a good idea is not a good idea, no matter who comes up with the idea, inclusion is even more important. So what we are trying to do, more or less the same way that you are describing, even if our organizations are much younger, different industries and all that, and much smaller. We're not that many. But I think what we are trying to do is closely to the same things. But we started with the lead team because I think it was a very kind of cold awakening for us. Being also a Swedish company with a headquarters in Sweden, we were not really doing well. And being the leaders within stream music and having a position that is only ours to lose, we kind of woke up to the fact of high-tech industries, no matter in the world, are not doing well in this space. And why wouldn't we be able, in a couple of years, if we really set up, the objective and work hard on it, why wouldn't we have the leader jersey within this field too? And the numbers were telling us we were not doing well, and it was not really reassuring that we were not doing worse than the other high-tech companies. We want to be really good in this area too. So starting with provocative guest, and I think I see somebody here too, speakers to come in and really put the finger where it hurts to the lead team. On have you thought about this? Do you know this? Are you aware of these things? But also in a good way, kind of teaching us and also reminding us of one thing. When you have a bias, that means you're a human, right? So you're not bad, and not trying to kind of come up with the things of like, go into defense mood. But if you have a brain, you're going to be biased. Be aware of that, and started to do the trainings or the talks or the provocative kind of sessions with the lead team, and then have more systematic bias busting trainings for all hiring managers, all managers, and all employees, and especially for the talent acquisition team, the recruiters. So we are aware of where we go wrong or where we should probably just rethink and be innovative within this space too, not just within stream music and our core business. And point back to the business reason for that. We need to stay innovative. We all want to go to a workplace to have fun, but also saying the truth. I mean, when you become really diverse, it's sometimes going to be a headache too. When everybody is not thinking the same, not coming from the same angle, we're not addressing the things the same way, you're going to be frustrated, and sometimes frustrated as hell, right? But good things come out of that, and not try to do it because it's politically correct, or in some countries where we operate, it's kind of the new black to talk about this. And I think here the Swedishness, and drive the Swedishness back, and thinking about Swedish leadership and what's important to us, and also all the experience that we do have within organization. Even if we are not best in class all the time, we can do much better in so many areas. But try to not reinvent the wheel within this area. And then also visit other organizations and lower the guard and say we're not really good at this, and still with pride, I think, to fast forward the whole process. So that would be some parts of the roadmap. And then of course then do a lot of, just decide like naming years. 2015 was the year of awareness. And really going out on town halls and admitting that we don't know. This is not our forte. It's not the black belt of the lead team, but we want to learn and we want to be much better. And then 2016 was the year of activities, and then trying not to spread ourselves thin, to actually move the needle when it comes to the numbers, but always have inclusion and push inclusion.
How important is modern working practices and perhaps changing working culture? Because I'm very aware that in a lot of industries, women are actually working in a male-designed workplace. And I'm sort of wondering what the effect of flexible working or smart working or shared parental leave can have on moving the dial towards diversity and inclusion. Aniela, would you like to reflect on that?
Absolutely. I think that one of the most interesting things when it comes to flexible working is that traditionally flexible working was perceived as a path that those that want to slow down are taking, mostly women for caregiver responsibilities. And because we set off on this path of not considering flexible working as a reward for performance, but quite the opposite, as something that is being taken upon by those who slow down. That kind of attitude towards flexible working collided frontally with the definition of organizations of what is a productive and committed worker. So one of the things that we see as being essential when it comes to flexible working, it's actually twofold. To clearly send the message in the organization that flexibility is reward for performance. So to have people that are at the top of the organization, in line positions that work flexible in a very visible way. And making sure that there is no gender difference when it comes to the uptake of these flexible working practices. So that this is no longer for those women who have to pick up the kids from school. No, this is for every single employee that has a life outside the office and commitments outside the office. And I think that there we come at the intersection between how important it is for the people that are the leaders of the organization to be role models and to start being very visible about it. And we had a very nice example of one of the companies that we work with, where the CEO, he was a young father, and he said, I made a purpose in the internal meetings at 5:30 to stand up and to say, today is my day to pick up the kids from school. I will leave you here. I will be back online later today or tomorrow. And he said it would have been so easy for me just to stand up and say, I have another meeting, I have another call. Nobody would question that. But he was very purposeful in saying, I am leaving for caregiver responsibilities. So I think that bringing these counter-stereotypical examples and reinforcing them, it is very, very important.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, totally. And I think there are a couple of things. Role modeling, I think, is really, really important. And I think in a young company like ours, where most of the CXOs and the CEO have young kids, taking their parental leave, picking up and leaving their children for daycare or school, and be a bit vocal about that, not necessarily because it's like so special, but just because also in a company where you have more than 100 nationalities, it's not as natural for everybody, and when the fathers do that, it actually also pivots what happens with the women and their possibilities. The other thing is a couple of semantic things that we do is like we don't talk about work-life balance because we happen to think that work is life too. We talk about work-family balance. And family is not just the traditional way you have to have children. Your family can look different and it doesn't have to be the heteronormative way either. But to try to help and support that. And for us, again, back to the Swedishness, there's so much to be proud of, but also that brings very, it will help define you as a global, employee branding too. When we launched our global parental leave, which is not 480 days, what we are accustomed to in Sweden, because we then pay for the whole thing in the rest of the world. But it was very, very natural for us when we came up with the idea, and Danny will probably say, well, it took you some time, Katarina, but when we did 2015, it was obvious for us that we wanted to, have 6 months, no matter if you were a dad or a mom, no matter if you carried that child yourself, adoption, surrogacy, all the things that are quite natural for us, right? And it's a special time, it will not come back, and you want to work in a company that appreciates that. You also want to have that company in a society that we all want to live in. And the question when we launched it in US, and thought that the reaction there might be big, because if you're a good employer, my friends in US, you give them 3 weeks. If you're a super employer, you give them 3 months. And them, by that, I mean the mother that gave birth. For us then to give everybody 6 months plus 1 month to ease back, to rearrange and the things that you bring up, and get your life back together with a new family member and what that means, and with all the new things that you have to accommodate, to do that, and also then lean back to the rest of the world and say, we have more than 20 years of both moms and dads to go, and it's not going to hurt your career, and you do that and come back in your job or a different job but on the same position. We could do that. We could even urge people to do that, and they didn't have to be afraid to do that. And we were not expecting words like life-changing. But the other thing is, when we do that and have more, today, men in our organization, what happens with the women is a couple of other things. It gives them opportunities. It also gives them some, reassurance that it's not just on them if they're going to work with us, and that we do have a system to provide for the whole family. Another, I think, practical is, again, back to the Swedishness, equal pay. that we do that analyze every year. And we don't do it for Sweden because it's compliant here. We do that obviously for all our employees. Again, we were very surprised how that was like, oh my God, this is a big thing. But again, you should never worry about, do you do the same job? Will you get the same pay? Or is it because I was a better negotiator? Or is it because I kind of have a big head and think that I can do things rather than what I actually, achieve? So I think a lot of things that are very practical you can do, which doesn't mean that you have cracked the code of everything, but I think you can fast forward a couple of things. And then the new ways of working. I think digital in this space, it helps us. You don't have to go to work and sit there and work, which means that the person that usually is the project manager for the household, the woman, can actually now have a way of organizing that if you can't organize it within the two people that runs that household. So I think the digital era has also helped us if we use that in a very smart and sensitive way. I think we're only in the beginning of that. But I will stop there because you have a lot of other concrete examples.
No, but I can build because I can just build further on what both of you have said and recognize it. And what we also have done, for instance, in a country like India, we are providing daycare, and we're doing that in Japan and South Korea because we can't use the same method and the same approach everywhere because it looks different depending on the markets, right? We're also having job sharing leadership positions. So we can have store managers who are 2 female, in some cases men actually, is sharing the position. In Japan, we have done something we're very proud of, is that we challenged the way we were paying. So the history of Japan has been that when you work part-time, you are paid less than when you're working full-time. And most of the positions for part-time was women. So we have been a game changer in the society by providing equal salary, regardless if you work part-time or full-time. And that has not moved the loyalty and the commitment and the engagement within IKEA, but it also making a societal impact in the Japanese society. And I actually think that big corporations and big companies today have the responsibility to support the movement when it comes to equality. So that would give you some examples. And maybe to mention in India also now that we're providing buses for both men and women because it's dangerous in the evening when you're working late night shift. It's actually a big risk for you to go home by public transport. So I think that what we are trying to do, and I agree what you're saying, diversity is not only about numbers, it's also about the whole mindset and the inclusion part, and we still have challenges here. But then it is also to really understanding what is hindering us and how do we take away those barriers quite practically, and again being quite action-oriented. And I think that has made where we are today.
Can I pick up on the sort of the hindering? Because, I mean, women that work for your 2 companies, I think, are very fortunate because you are both innovative. But for many women, they are working, as I say, in quite old-fashioned organizations. How can women help themselves?
Just without thinking too much. One thing I think is to truly believe in yourself and not putting up mental barriers. And I've actually been in many conversations where women are more doubtful about their potential to entering a certain position and to really having that mindset, it's okay. I think your quote actually is right. It's about having the right support system also at home. Having an equal partner, I think, is very important. But also, I used to say, choose the right leader or right manager who really supports you. Then I think it's actually about power also. Don't be afraid to take the power. There is always a vacuum, and you can be part of leading certain questions, but you also need to be part of moving these things and taking the powers just spontaneously. That would be my answer.
Do you think role models are important and mentoring, Aniela?
I think that role models are extremely important because seeing is believing, right? And what is really interesting in respect to what Ulrika said, I think that probably one of the most difficult things for women in certain workplaces is to be themselves and not to feel compelled to adapt to some informal workplace cultures and norms, but rather to have the capacity to impregnate the culture of their own values. And I think that that's one of the most difficult things to do. And this is why role models that successfully manage to do so are extremely important. And what we see now, especially with the younger generation, is that the younger generation are very good to spot the toxic role models. So they are very good to look up at the top of the organization and saying, well, if this is the price to pay for me as a young woman starting my career in this organization to get to the top, then I definitely don't want to do that. So one of the most interesting situations that we have encountered in working with an investment bank when it comes to creating role models, they said, well, how can we break that barrier, that implicit definition of what a committed and productive worker is? So they looked at their global talent pipeline to find somebody that is part of the top leadership team, a woman who had an unusual career. And much to their surprise, they found a member of the executive team who never, ever worked. She was a managing director, never worked full-time. Never. So, of course, the first reaction of the company was, how did that happen? How come we didn't catch that before? But then the second was to say, well, how did you do it? And you are being so successful. Is it something in what you do that we can actually elevate and we can make it accessible for other people in the organization? And talking very openly about that case, I think it contributes to change and to create those different role models that we all aspire to.
But I think they are there. I think the role models are there, and I think we all talk about what you can't see, you can't be. But for a long time, I think in my generation, we did see, but we didn't see that many. So there are good role models out there. I think another thing that would be, I think you can ask the question, obviously you can ask the question of what can we do for ourselves or what can women do, but somebody has to be quiet too for somebody else to be able to speak up. So I think there are a couple of men that can speak a bit less, and you have to give the space. Yeah, but you have to give the space to somebody, and if you have been like a club of people or a type of people, white men, you have to give that space to somebody, right? So something has to go, and it's not just what you can do. And I think the third thing that what we really could do is something that usually happens at 45, when people go like, what happened to you, is earlier to start calling bullshit. I think, as a young woman, it's like, you're polite and you know that you can do this better and you know that you have a solution, but you're quiet and you wait for your turn and all that. Instead of when you hear really stupid things coming from people that always have the airtime, call bullshit. You don't have to wait until 45, and this is where also. You know what I'm talking to. You know what I'm talking to about. Is like when you get the first look of, you never been a bitch before. It's me speaking my mind, not me being right? So I think call bullshit, and I think that is what we can do for ourselves. I mean, the potential is there, the talent is there. I mean, the grades are there. We know all that. But I think there are other things that we can do that is in a wide escape, and I think you touched on that is really important. I think all companies and all communities and all societies can do things that are wider or outside ourselves. We can sponsor things so we can help, this movement go a bit faster. And there will always be 2 steps ahead and then 1 step back. Don't be hit by that backlash. There can only be a backlash if there was a front lash, right? It can only be a backlash then. And I think we should not be discouraged by that. And we sponsor Pop Color, and we sponsor Techline, and we sponsor a Code Center. And you see that, to these, it's more girls that go there. And then something happens when they decide, to go to in Sweden in gymnasium, and then even more so when they go to university. So we do something to our girls when they become young, women, and also then women. We have to stop doing that right? So I think it's more of us not sitting on our hands or becoming bitter. I think we need to do a much better job of storytelling and the positive storytelling. I think we could do that.
And Ulrika, at IKEA, how have you managed to get more women into the boardroom? Because we know that building a talent pipeline is really important, but the percentage of female directors is still woefully small. And I just wondered if you had a strategy specifically to get more women into the boardroom.
I would say that as I described before, we set a goal of 50% quite many years ago, and it has taken us a while to come there. And I think it's the various things. It's both the mindset and really working with diversity and inclusion in an integrated way to benefit from the business, to give you trainings and the networking and all examples I've given. I think that in a totality has summed up. And then I think what we really have gained very much support from is the rooted culture and values that we are having. And I think many companies today are talking about culture and values, but I think it's a difference for talking about them and having them on the wall and living them. And when you live them, people feel that, and when you live them, magic is happening. And I think the magic, what is happening actually, that you also see some results. And then if we're looking at our ultimate board, we have 3 women there today as external board members. And we are moving that target as well, but that is of course the next step as well, so we're not fully there in the board.
I think that one very interesting strategy is to look for talent in unusual places when it comes to board members. Because the general knowledge is that we want a sitting CEO, right, to sit on our board. But if we go beyond that and said, okay, why do we want a sitting CEO? What are the characteristics that we are actually looking for in those sitting CEOs? And then what is very interesting to see that there are major, massive NGOs that are led by women that absolutely have the complexity and the depth of the operations that a multinational company would have. Now, this is a sector where female talent is abundant, for which female talent do self-select. So why not going and looking for this kind of talents in the NGO world? In academia, there are subject matter experts that work for leading universities in the world that would definitely can do a phenomenal contribution in the board conversation of the companies, or even in some leading consulting firms, some of the managing directors in the consulting firms that have, again, a very wide range of experiences. So these are 3 places where we do not necessarily look for talent because we have this idea in mind, we want a sitting CEO. But if we go beyond that and said what we are actually looking for, I think that's this purposeful search for the qualities, again, rather than the usual package that we are used with.
So we've got a couple of minutes more. So I'd like to ask each of you, I know there isn't a magic bullet, but is there one particular policy that has won hearts and minds and numbers? Out of all the work that you're doing, has one proved to be more effective than perhaps others?
Okay, so we're still a very young company, so I'd probably give you a different answer, but if it's something that has proven making a big difference, it would be the global parental leave for us, because it changed so much, both for our mothers and fathers, and the people that are thinking, but maybe was afraid that it would hurt their career. And also, a very good chance for a bit more junior people, no matter gender, age, experience, to then step in as road managers or managers when these people then kind of add the system by going away and being their best version as parents for a while. So it gives you a chance of doing a lot of things that I think Swedish companies take for granted. But you can actually try out as a manager, you can try out as a specialist for 6 to 7 months, and there's no loose phase or anything bad by you stepping back or going somewhere else in the monkey bar rather than in the typical, staircase. So I think if I would mention one thing, that would be that, the Lead on Leave initiative.
Ulrika?
I would say that I think the goal setting has been the really change driver for us, and I think it's connected to that we're a very action-oriented company. So one thing is the goal and the focus, but follow up, but also to get recognition. When I, as a leader, have actually promoted and worked with equality and diversity in many aspects, I've been recognized but also rewarded by it, and that has made a difference. So I would say the goal setting.
And finally, Aniela?
I think that in addition to what was mentioned, definitely the proactive management of pay equity and as much transparency as possible around compensation. Why not put everybody's salaries and total pay in the intranet so that everybody knows what everybody's paid? I think that would be great.
Well, I think that's a great note to finish on. So thank you very much, and thank you very much to the panel.